The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus entered a village where a woman whose name was Martha welcomed him. She had a sister named Mary who sat beside the Lord at his feet, listening to him speak. Martha, burdened with much serving, came to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me by myself to do the serving? Tell her to help me." The Lord said in reply, "Martha, Martha, you're anxious and worried about many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
What would you do if Jesus showed up on your doorstep this afternoon? Imagine you're watching TV, or you're in the kitchen cooking, or on the computer or the phone, and all of a sudden the doorbell rings, or there's a knock on the door. You go to the door, and there's Jesus Christ himself. What's the first thing you would do? I know when I was a kid, I know what my mother would do. Whenever the grandparents or a priest showed up unexpected, she'd hand me some money and go up the store, get some soft drinks, some nuts, and some snacks. I know what Father Trinity would do. He'd get out his seafood boil pot and start throwing a big Cajun dinner together because he loves to cook. And probably my first reaction too would be, what do I have here for Jesus to eat? Because our first instinct, I think, when we receive a guest is to serve them, to make sure we have food, to make sure that they're taken care of. Now, Abraham, in that first reading, definitely had that instinct. Because God and two angels visit Abraham. Abraham tells him to go out to get the food, just like my mother used to tell me. They bring the food back, and I did some research. You know how much food Abraham prepared? 80 pounds of bread and 700 pounds of meat. I think that's more than we had at the picnic last night. But Abraham had that same instinct. He knew it was God and two angels, but it's like, I need to feed them. Did you notice in that first reading that it's not until the last line when God tells him what he came for? I'm going to return in a year and you'll have a son. I got to thinking this week how often we get so busy preparing and doing things that we don't have a chance to hear what God has to say to us until the very last minute, just like Abraham did. Our world is very, very busy this time in our lives. I really think God is trying to speak to us. All you have to do is watch the evening news, unfortunately. The terror, the shootings, weather patterns changing. People are upset and people are angry. I even noticed, I don't know if it was the heat last week or what, but you know how 75 gets nowadays where it's bumper to bumper traffic. Turkey foot sometimes also. I think I saw more people rear-ended this week than I've seen in my entire life. And I think it's because we're in such a hurry. Could also be because we're on the cell phone or texting, which is part of the issue too. We always need a computer, an iPad, a cell phone, something going on. But how can you hear God speaking when you've got all of that going on? We're trying to fill ourselves with the wrong things. And that's why so many people are getting involved in drugs and everything. They're trying to fill that emptiness. The emptiness can only be filled with God. When we don't fill it with God, we're going to turn to something else. Alcohol, drugs, pornography, money, whatever it is. But we have to realize that God is trying to speak to us constantly, and if we don't let that empty space be filled with God, it's going to become something unhealthy. So, in the Gospel, we hear two different perspectives, Martha and Mary. Martha always gets the bum rap, but remember, Jesus said she was doing nothing wrong. She was preparing to serve him like we all should, but he said Mary had chosen the better part. And what was she doing? Simply sitting at his feet and listening. Now, in her time, that was a radical move. First off, Jesus wasn't supposed to speak to women in public. Secondly, only his disciples were supposed to sit at his feet and listen to his teachings. So this brave woman makes a stance and says, no, I'm going to sit here and listen to my Lord. And that's what we're all called to do, to slow down and listen to where he's guiding us. This was a strange week in the parish. I had to bury a 38-year-old from an overdose the night before last, a mother of 3. And I received a call, thankfully, from a parishioner who told me of a young man who was over at St. Elizabeth's with an overdose, 31 years old. First, I thought I was too busy to go over. I was supposed to be doing a commercial for the Freedom Park thing we had scheduled. Then I got to thinking, how can I give this homily when I know someone's over there who needs a priest and I'm going to be doing a commercial? No, so I left, went to talk to this guy, 31 years old, who went to Catholic school, Catholic high school, lost his way in depression and anxiety, and had been on heroin for 10 years. He's going to be in the hospital for 5 more weeks. He's been there for 2 weeks. His insides are so infected from all the heroin. But Andy was a phenomenal person. We sat and talked for the longest time, and I learned before I had that funeral what leads people to such despair and drugs. That emptiness, that depression, that anxiety that only God can take care of. But I had to stop and listen to him before I could understand and do the homily for the woman that I was burying that night. So often God is trying to speak to us through other people too, but we're too busy to stop and listen to them. So it seems God's message is pretty clear this week. Our world is busy. I hate to be a pessimist, but right now our world is pretty troubled. All you have to do is turn on the news. God is trying to tell us something. So this week, pay attention to your listening skills. How much time a day do you give to simply stop and listen to God? To breathe deeply and try to hear his voice? How much time do you give to listening to your spouse? How much time do you give to listening to your children when they might have something to say? Or even that friend that you know is struggling. God wants us to be good listeners, not only to him, but to all of his people. Dale Carnegie said it well when he said, "You make more friends by becoming interested in other people than by trying to interest other people in yourself." Take some time this week to stop and listen.